Happy Soto anniversary, Mets fans. It's day 2 of the winter meetings, and a lot of information has gotten out there. We're going to bring you everything that happened today, including news that just broke within the last couple minutes, next on Metcast. What's going on, Met fans? Welcome back to another offseason edition of Metcast. Always, I am right with my partner, Dan Bartels of the New York Post. And Dan, today was a very talkative day. You got Jon Heyman, his latest reports, Joel Sherman, something you spoke about right as we got on air, which puts a lot of, interesting things out there. If you want to get to that right away, I just want to say happy Juan Soto signing anniversary. We were all hoping for a big signing today. It didn't come, but we did get a lot of news. Guys like Pete Alonso, Kyle Schwarber. You're hearing things out of left field, the outfield, David Stearns comments, which we'll get to multiple of them throughout the show. But Dan, what's going on?
Right. Wow. Winter meetings are here already. Just like that, the off season in full swing. It's unbelievable. It's good to see. Hopefully we get an active winter meetings because there's some years where it's just not active and it's unfortunate, but I do think we're going to get a lot of activity this year, specifically with the New York Mets. We'll get into it. And also the Juan Soto signing day. That's always special. 10 p.m. tonight. He signed on that Sunday, which just kicked off a great, what we thought, off season for the Mets. And we can get into that too. But good day. And it's a good anniversary. But this is breaking right now. So this is per my colleague at the New York Post, Joel Sherman, does great stuff. He says that the Brewers have gotten calls from the Mets and the Yankees about Trevor Megill. Now, Trevor Megill, as many of us know, is the brother of Tyler Megill, who is a New York Met. He was tendered a contract, which a lot of people were questioning if he would even be tendered a contract. He's in their long-term plans. He's going to be in the back end of the bullpen likely in 2027. And if you bring in his brother, that's where this is stemming from, clearly having that family connection and liking the stuff, the connection to the Brewers. There's definitely something there. So it says, quote here, that yes, the Brewers are open for business on starter Freddie Peralta if a suitor is willing to meet a steep price for their ace. But they're getting calls from even more teams about reliever Trevor Megill, including from both the Mets and the Yankees. Megill's 32 years old, made his first all-star team last season. He earned 30 saves, pitching to a 2.49 ERA. Pretty good. If the Mets can get that guy in here, then you can obviously kiss Edwin Diaz goodbye, but we could have been saying that the second Devin Williams got signed as well. So definitely an active start to these winter meetings for sure.
Yeah, and Megill's been solid for years. The last 2 years, ERA under 3. I mean, his 3 years ago, he had a 3.63 ERA. Someone we talked about could throw 100 miles an hour. I don't know what his contract situation looks like. I believe he's been in the big leagues for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So I don't know if he got the rookie status, but he's going into his age 32 season. It almost feels as though the Mets stand are really preparing right now for life after Edwin Diaz. And I hate to say that, but I'm trying to keep it a buck here with you guys. Every single which way we look, we had the report out yesterday. They checked in on the closer of San Diego, the other reliever, back end reliever. I'm like skipping in my head right now. Yeah. And now you have this. Is it BS? They're just putting that out there to gauge markets potentially, but the Brewers, maybe you make a package. It would probably cost you a lot, but adding a back of the pen guy like that for just prospects allows the Mets to potentially move their money somewhere else. And it's really interesting. We can get right into the Pete stuff right away. Look, the reports are out there. I know, take it for what it is. Multiple people say the Mets are in on Schwarber. Your colleague of the New York Post, Mike Puma, said it earlier today. Jon Heyman said, believe it or not, the Mets are in on Schwarber. Now, whether or not that's to drive up a price, we saw the Pittsburgh offer come out yesterday, the 4 years, about $100 million. A source that I spoke to said it was closer to about $108 million, $109 million that offer, which is a real offer for a guy like Kyle Schwarber. But let's be real. He's not signing for $25 million a year for 4 years. He's probably going to get, I'm going to guess, between 125 and 140, which is a little crazy, but it's going to be a short-term deal for him. We watched Pete last year. People thought it would be nuts for Pete Alonso to get a $30 million a year contract, but the only reason why he got got it was because of the short term of it, kind of like a Kyle Schwarber. Now, Dan, let me pass this to you. Some people are talking all over the internet, and I get it. It's either Kyle or Alonso. That's what Heyman said today. The Mets have to land one of those guys. But is there a scenario where you could see the Mets potentially landing both? And I'm going to give you my answer right after I hear yours.
Realistically, no, I don't see it happening. In my heart of hearts, and I know he talks about run prevention, and I totally get how it doesn't fit, but it does because Schwarber's a DH. He's a left-handed DH. Pete, as he gets older, he's going to be a right-handed DH more so than the first baseman. It does work out in that regard. Pete can still play his first base most of the time, but I just don't see it working again with Stearns saying run prevention, and you're to bring back Pete and then clog up the DH and Schwarber. So as much as I would love to see it, it does feel like one or the other.
Yeah, and you know what? Guys, please like this video. I always say, like the video, subscribe if you're new here, consider becoming a member. Shout out to some of the members that are in the chat. We'll be getting to your comments and questions and thoughts throughout the stream. I'll put it to you this way. Is there a world where Kyle Schwarber takes a lesser contract, or Pete? Look, Pete doesn't want to hear it, guys, but the facts are the facts. What's the first report we got out of the winter meetings, Dan? The contract that Pete desires is simply not there right now. There's a reason why he's going to be at the winter meetings tomorrow. I think there's a couple reasons, and I put an opinion piece out today. Very short, and I'll get to it in 1 second once I find it on my my stream. But when you're looking at a guy like Pete Alonso, I have it right here. Pete Alonso shows up to the winter meetings, tells me one thing. The Mets made it clear that they're not repeating last year's dragged out saga. They're not letting contract talks, quote unquote, hold up the entire offseason again this time. The Mets are pushing the pace, and Alonso's presence feels like a sign that they want to get this resolved sooner rather than later. And when I say resolved, I do not mean re-signing with the Mets. What happened last year cannot. And I have a lot of people down in the comments saying, well, Ray, what does it matter? Does it matter? Yeah, it does. Because if Pete's going, it puts a guy like Bellinger more into perspective. It puts other free agents in perspective. If Pete's going to hold out, which all indications is that the contracts are not there. Joe DeMayo said it 2 months ago. He doesn't see him getting more than 3 years, 4 max. And then they put it out there right as the offseason started. He's looking for a 7-year contract, Dan, which we all know is not going to happen. I got a feeling that the max contract Pete's going to get is 4 years. I wouldn't be surprised if he signs for, 3 years, $93 million and returns to Queens. And why I'm saying that might be important is because, and Stearns touched on it today, adding a guy like Marcus Semien in the field makes Pete's job way easier because you can say, Pete, anything hit to your right, get to the bag. Take 1,000 throws from first to a moving pitcher all throughout this offseason. We don't need you diving in the hole. You got one of the best defenders in the game to your right. You have a Gold Glover at shortstop, and I believe, unlike last year, because people forget, I think Brett Beatty, who, it's funny, I'm getting arguments with people all day long, Dan, about, Brett Beatty's not the starting first baseman. And then, of course, David Stern or Carlos Mendoza says in his press conference today, we envision Brett Beatty getting the majority of reps at third base. Tells you he's the starting first baseman. He just named it right there over Mark Vientos. It's happening. And don't forget, when all this saga was happening with Pete, what happened? Beatty and Vientos were forced to put on first base gloves, start to learn first base. Now, I'm not saying Vientos won't keep doing that, but Beatty now strictly focuses in on third. I think he's already a pretty damn good defender over there. So when we talk about run prevention, you don't have to have plus defenders everywhere. You're going to have 3 in the infield potentially. And that's why I'm saying if Pete signs for 3 years, you can give Schwarber that 4-year, knowing in your head, Pete's going to play first base for 3 years. It's not going to be great, but it's also not going to be terrible because what you have on the infield. That would be my argument.
Yeah, it just thinks that the lineup, the contracts are not going to line up that way, right? It does seem like Pete, from everything that you're hearing, that he's going to wait out, and he's flying up and meeting at the winter meetings, which is great. Good for him that he's going to meet with the Red Sox. He's going to meet with the Orioles. He's going to meet maybe with the Mets, but definitely with those 2 teams. He wants to know what his market is. Can he get that 5th year? Is it worth getting that 5th year? Because I agree with you. I don't really know if he does, because teams would have been jumping and giving him that 5 years. We saw Naylor. If Naylor held out, he probably could have got a lot more money and probably an extra year or two at this point. So these are things we don't think about. But for Pete, he has to figure it out. What do you want? Do you want to be a Met? Do you want to be back in Queens? I mean, these are always the questions that we're asking right now. You're 100% right with Brett Beatty. He is going to be the guy. Simeon makes it a lot easier on Pete on the right side. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Like, it's frustrating to think that we're at a point in the offseason where we might have Pete or Diaz back. If you want the honest truth, Ray, I don't know how those situations are looking, because
I agree.
It really is frustrating. If the Mets sign Kyle Schwarber this week, Pete Alonso's good as gone. And I wish I could sit here and say, oh, you could get the two of them. But just how the whole market's moving, how Pete is just going to be waiting out this market, it's not looking good for that happening.
Yeah, and I want to I'll briefly talk about the opinion that I spoke about earlier today, Dan. Maybe you can get into it a little bit. We talk about everyone wants Kyle Schwarber. Everyone wants Bellinger for outfield, right? That's kind of like the consensus that I get. Or a Kyle Tucker. Those three guys. What they all have in common is they're lefties. By Carlos Mendoza letting us know that Brett Beatty is getting the majority of reps at third base as a left-handed third baseman. Soto is a left-handed right fielder. And then you hear Heyman glowing about Carson Bench and how high David Stearns is on him. Tells you I didn't think about this coming into this offseason. I really think the Mets are going to make him the opening day center fielder. That's how high they are on him. Like, you hear them talk about him. He is, Martino was talking about it, how McLean's untouchable, and Carson Bench is pretty much right next to him with that. I think he's going to get the shot, which gives you a left-handed hitting right fielder, a left-handed hitting center fielder, a left-handed hitting third baseman. So that would take Schwarber out of it for me, because you want to have four lefties in the lineup, especially at the top of the lineup with those guys. And then you look at left field. What are the Mets going to do? You add a Bellinger, you're going to have an all left-handed hitting outfield. It's not, look, people say, oh, Ray, it doesn't matter because Tucker splits, Soto splits. I understand that, and I agree to you a little bit. But when you put things in perspective, in October, Dan, when teams have 2 and 3 lefties coming out of the pen, it's simply not ideal, because Beatty's not hitting 7, 8, or 9. They're going into next season with him penciled in the 6 hole, penciled in maybe in the 5 hole. If you bring a guy like Bellinger in, he's hitting in the top 5. Soto's already in the top 5. You bring in Schwarber, he's in the top 5. And we can have 3 out of 4 hitters are going to be lefties. You just don't see that in major league lineups. And that's why I keep thinking I'd be really surprised if we see the Mets breaking. They sign Cody Bellinger. I think Pete Alonso's gone. I think Schwarber's gone. And I think they'll address it in a different way. I mean, you saw David Stearns' comments this afternoon. He's smirking ear to ear, Dan. He's like, I always said, he's the worst liar. I'm not saying he's a liar. He's the worst fibber. He's the worst fibber. They asked him, David Stearns talks about him hoping what he's hoping to accomplish in the winter meetings. I'm confident that we're making progress to ultimately make some transactions that we really think are going to help this organization and team going forward. And he's grinning ear to ear. The last time I saw a smile like that was last offseason with Juan Soto. I got a feeling something big is going to break within the next couple days. And I'm not just saying that to say that to get clicks or something like that. I'm really not. I honestly feel that way. The Mets are exploring the trade market way too much. We didn't hear this last year, Dan. Did you hear them reaching out to San Diego, reaching out to the Brewers, reaching out to the Twins, reaching out to literally every single team out there to gauge the bullpen? Because if they're able to save money with Diaz, I highly, highly doubt, after what a disappointment last year was, that they're all of a sudden not going to spend as much money as they did last year. There's a world, and I know we just spoke about it, but there's a world where, depending on how comfortable Stearns is, I think Tucker would be the guy over Bellinger because of the lefty-lefty split. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I just want to say in preface that I am biased towards lefties because I'm a lefty myself. Lefty
Same
batter.
here.
So I always think that those guys, you can never have too many of them, especially when you face primarily righties in the game of baseball. It's good to have those lineups where I'm okay with having lefties. I don't know about 3 lefties in my outfield. That is where I do have to draw a line. I'll address that in a second. With Bellinger, I think you can have Bellinger on this team. If news breaks tomorrow, Cody Bellinger's a Met, I still think that path to Pete Alonso is still there, because whenever Cody Bellinger, he's not a full-time first baseman. He's really doesn't want to play first base, if you want the truth from Bellinger's perspective. So when he goes in, he's only replacing Pete. Give him a day off, which Pete, we know, does not want many days off. So that dynamic could work out. And then he's your left fielder. We talked about the household name to replace a Brandon Nimmo, because it's hard for fans to wrap themselves around the fact that you're losing Brandon Nimmo and you're not really improving in the outfield. Well, Cody Bellinger, I mean, that's a name that definitely improves the outfield. So for me, that would make a lot of sense. But I would consider, again, a Jake Myers. He's a right-handed hitting. I know he's a little bit better than Tyrone Taylor, but these are the guys that you're going to have to bring in, because the way I see it, right, we talk about addressing the bats, we talk about addressing the bullpen, we talk about addressing the starting rotation, and we talk really the bats and the outfielders are two separate things, because the bats, some people are saying DH and Schwarber, and then the other people are saying the outfielders, and of course the trade market, or with Kyle Tucker or Cody Bellinger and free agency. So that's where I'm there's so many different places that the Mets are going to have to try to figure out. For me, I feel like you can just trade for a Jake Myers. It's not going to cost an arm and a leg like a Jarren Duran would, or even a Luis Robert. And I don't want to take on a $20 million flyer on Luis Robert. I'm with you, where I want nothing to do with him. He is not the guy for the Mets, and he shouldn't be. I would take a Harrison Bader before a Luis Robert. But that's kind of where I'm thinking. The Mets are going to have to kind of shortchange us in one of these spots. You're going to go all in on the starting rotation. We have every report backing us at this point, with Framber Valdez being a real option for the Mets. And now Michael King in the fold. The Mets had a video call with Michael King, reports today breaking of that. They're really making a push for him as well. So you wouldn't.
That's who I want. You know that.
Yeah.
I understand the injuries, Dan, but when he's on, man.
So the Mets are already going to spend in the starting rotation, right? Let's just say they're going to do that. They spend on a bat, whether it's Bellinger, whether it's Schwarber, they get one of those guys. You're not going to keep spending for another outfielder. You're not going to get Bellinger and Tucker. So if you get a Bellinger, it makes a lot of sense to just trade for a Jake Myers. So there's always under the radar guys. I just think about the team and the bench for me, because you have to piece these. I know I'm ranting. You have to piece these puzzles. You have to piece this together as the offseason goes on, right? Like, they give you little crumbs. So we found out Brett Beatty's the third baseman today. All right, so check him off the list. He's going to be in the starting lineup, and he's going to be starting at third. What does that mean for Vientos? What does that mean for Mauricio? So those are two guys. Again,
Mauricio, who just had a walk-off home run, too.
I know his stock is going up, and I think Mauricio
trade him.
Big part of this team. Vientos could be the guy that they trade. So there's a lot of different things. Mets still apparently not out on Ketel Marte, according to Jeff Passan, who we must take every single word he says as gospel, apparently, in the baseball community. Well, okay. He still hasn't unlinked the Mets and Ketel Marte. So maybe
Where
Jeff
they
Passan.
Play him third?
Again, I don't know. Can Simeon still play third? Maybe put him over there. Marte
I'm
over
sure
there.
he could.
But Marte, I think, for the outfield was really what he was getting at there. So there's just so many different avenues for the Mets. Do they figure out all these avenues? I don't know. I think one of these spots they're going to have to trade in. I think that's the outfield, man. I do.
Now, before we get to David Stearns, just spoke to Steve Gelbs within the last 2 minutes. I want to play a little bit of that video. We'll react with you guys. So first we do that. Revo, appreciate you, my guy. As always, do you think Diaz will accept 4 years? I'll tell you this, and I appreciate that so much. Thanks so much for your support.
Thank you.
I reported 2 weeks ago, the first team that goes 5 years will land Diaz. Plain and simple. And now we hear from Heyman talking about how there could be multiple teams out there with 4-year offers. Allegedly, the Mets have a 4-year in there as well. Nobody's willing. I mean, he's what? Is this his age 32 he's going into, right? Mm-hmm. So he's 31 right now, I believe, in March, might be. I'm trying to remember.
March 22nd.
Okay, so 32, 33, 34, 35. If you're able to get him on a 4-year contract, then think about the back end of that bullpen where you're going to get the final prime years of Diaz. He has a lost velocity, spin rate. Everything looks fine with him and Devin Williams. And then you say, see you later. I mean, maybe I'm thinking, Dan, and I'll get your thoughts on this. I'm wondering if them putting this out there for Trevor Megill, oh, the Mets called. The Mets don't leak. And I doubt it's the Brewers saying anything. Maybe it's the Mets saying, hey, we're not waiting around for you, buddy. You better make up your mind, because if you don't, we swing a trade, your market goes goodbye. Because we saw it today. Heyman talked about it. The Dodgers are not in on him. They're just not. And the only other team allegedly checked in on him right now is Toronto. If the Mets go and trade for Trevor Megill, his market tumbles. Does it not? There's no competition out there.
I think personally, Ray, Diaz's market took a tumble the second the Mets gave out a 3 for 45 with a $6 million
right.
signing bonus. No opt-outs on a 3-year deal for Devin Williams. To me, my heart sank because I knew at that point there's a really good chance that Diaz is not back, and they just use this as that's their closer. Ideally, we all want the big piece, right? We always want the Mets to go above and beyond and have a back end of the bullpen of Devin Williams and Edwin Diaz. Oh, that sounds amazing. I thought the same thing. I threw out a tweet before. We all thought the same thing last year. We're sitting here. We signed Juan Soto. This is amazing. What's the next move? At least smart Mets fans were thinking about that, right? It's fun to react for a day or so, but then you move on. Well, guess what happened 3 days later? The Red Sox traded for Garrett Crochet, and they extended him and made him their ace. So the Mets can't miss the mark along the way. They can't just, sign Devin Williams. Like, I still want Diaz, but you can't just take your foot off the gas. And especially if they sign Trevor Williams, or Trevor Megill, it's over.
Trade for him.
Trade for him. It's that's good as gone. So, but I think the leverage that the Mets have over Diaz, that's still very strong because they have Devin Williams. With Pete Alonso, the Mets don't have leverage. And if they sign Kyle Schwarber, that's some leverage.
You would have to give up a monster haul for Megill. Check this out, Dan.
Yep.
He's got 3 years of control.
And
this is his 32 season. So 32, 33, 34. He is estimated to make $6.5 million this year. Diaz wants what, 23? $18 million difference. Look,
Dylan Ross and Ryan Clifford for Trevor Megill.
It's going to take more than that. If he's actually available, I think 3 years, one of the top closers in the game.
Yeah, I know. I feel like a lot of these
stack it at this point. Just get Megill, get Diaz in here, make Devin Williams your 7th inning guy.
Yeah. Listen, I know we want the best pen, and I agree. I want a super pen too. I think that's a real way to win a championship. It is. But you got to score runs. You got to prevent runs. Like, I find it so laughable that we sit here and quote David Stearns, who's, again, Harvard educated. I'm a big fan of David Stearns. He's here for the long haul. But we take him at his word too literally. We're fundamentalists when it comes to David Stearns. Like, he says the word run prevention, so we think, he's definitely, everybody who can't play defense is out the door. I don't know.
Just Brandon Nimmo.
Right. Well, and also that run prevention, you do that by scoring more runs and getting good starting pitching. That's how you really prevent runs.
Pitching is everything with run. I mean, Dan, I think twofold. I think you're dead on with that. The last month of the season when we had starting pitchers, our entire rotation couldn't go 3 innings. Talk about run prevention. Maybe that's a hint at them. I mean, you like Imai, who he's got to sign what he's got to sign what before Christmas?
December 22nd.
Say it again.
December 22nd.
And when you hear about the teams interested, it's pretty much the Yankees, the Mets, the Orioles. I saw mentioned there was one other team as well. The Giants came out, said they don't plan on giving out a 9-figure contract, which he's going to get. The more I think about it, if I could walk away and look, King is a David Stearns special. He loves the injury-prone guy, a la Frankie Montas. Knows it's not going to be a 5-year contract, but if he does stay healthy, it's a big if, but it's an if. He could pitch as an ace whenever. You add him and Imai, all it costs you is money. I'm all over that. Then you still have your prospects. That's something that Heyman spoke about today too, is the Mets really don't want to trade these pitching prospects because that's what David Stearns prides himself on, developing these guys, and not a ton of people heard. I mean, nobody heard about Jonah Tung going into last year. Now every Met fan has him as untouchable. Going into last year, the Mets had one pitching prospect, and he was the number one guy in Brandon Sproat that was untouchable. McLean and Tung came out of nowhere, and one looks like a stud. And that's why look, I know a lot of people don't, but I trust David Stearns with this because he sees these guys and says, they got to tinker this, and this. And all of a sudden they're way better. And I know it's going to keep happening. Look at our farm system around baseball. Everybody I've spoken to, you look at Baseball America, Baseball Savant, MLB.com, Baseball Emeritus, all of their prospect rankings, every single one of them usually has guys all over the place. They all have the Mets within the top 7 farm systems. And that's after being in the mid to late 20s for 5 years consistently before Stearns got here. And shout out to the Mets. I believe we have a 0.7% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick. We need to pull off a New York Islanders and nail that thing, Dan.
Yeah, I don't know. The Giants, too, might have the first overall pick. We'll see what happens with that. But listen, I think, winter meeting is going to be really fun this year. I think there's real smoke around the Mets. And I always like to put it in perspective, right? Because we're sitting here in 2025. I remember being in 2015 in 8th grade, and we always have these memories, right? We look back, and the Mets were never in these negotiations the way that they are today. And I thank Steve Cohen. I thank him for putting this organization in the right spot to be able to put bids in a Yamamoto for $300 million, even though the Mets got used in that negotiation. I don't want to be used again. I don't think the Mets are going to be used again. And they could be the top bidder for Schwarber at this point. I think you put out a tweet today saying that something along those lines, like the Mets aren't going to stop if they're the top bidder. They should already be the top bidder. I agree. They should have the top bids in for Framber Valdez. They should have the top bidders in for Kyle Schwarber. They should have the top Kyle Tucker, 10 years. I might stay away from that. Cody Bellinger, they should have the top offer on because he's only probably going up to 6 years. Mets should be all over that because the Yankees, they're a little hesitant to pour out money this offseason. You're hearing from Jim Bowden on Foul Territory, kind of just talking about the winter meetings, what he's hearing. He's hearing the opposite, that the Yankees are going to go balls to the wall and spend and be in on all these types of free agents. I disagree. I think the Yankees they know they need a starting pitcher. Maybe they trade with Miami or something like that, but the Yankees, they're probably not going to spend if there's a big bidding war for Cody Bellinger. So if you're the Mets,
saw a report on that today. They said they're not going to do what they did with Soto last year. They're not going to let someone run off the market.
Yeah, well, that's exactly. So you don't want to be that team that gets used, but you also don't want to be the team that's also going to lose a guy in a negotiation. So that's where the Yankees are with Bellinger and the Mets. And just, you got to get one of these guys.
Now let's get to these comments made really quick. I didn't even get to see them yet, but I always like the one-on-one because I love reading body language.
Yep.
So let's take a peek at this. I got it pulled up right here.
Let's do it.
David, when you guys have a season like you did last year and you go through the evaluation process, what 1 or 2 things do you sit back and say, okay, maybe philosophically I need to change my view on that in particular?
Yeah, so I think as you look back on any season, you try to learn something from it. And certainly it's perhaps easier to learn things when seasons don't go the way you had anticipated or the way you expected or hoped. And I think as we looked back on this year, there were a couple things that we didn't do well enough that we're going to have to do better going forward. And that will change some of how we build our teams. And look, we talked about during the season, we didn't get enough innings from our starting pitching. That was clear. And I think a lot of times we look at the overall starting pitching quality, and the quality can be okay, but if we are getting the 3 2/3 start or the 2 1/3 inning start, it can really have a.
Dan, when you just said it, the run prevention aspect. Is he not screaming that right there? It's about pitching. We could talk defense all we want. Yeah, Brandon wasn't the greatest defender, but I also think that's a long play. You don't think so?
I agree. That's also, you need guys that can give you innings too. It's a big
Right.
problem.
The 3 2/3 will continue.
A pretty significant chaining effect on your team for the next week, and it can take you a while to dig out of it. So I do think we are cognizant that whether it's through internal players or external acquisitions, we've got to get more innings out of our starters consistently.
How do you view that starting staff right now? Because all the focus seems to be on the young players, and understandably so. But you have guys in Manaea and Peterson and Senga who are not that far removed from pretty elite years. And you've got at times elite contributions from at least a couple of them last season. So when you're looking for more innings, more consistency, how do you view guys like that in particular?
So that's the balance here. And we have to make sure that people we potentially are bringing in from the outside are not displacing players who have pretty significant upside that we already have internally. So look, Sean Manaea is a year removed from being one of the best stars in the National League. Kodai Senga, through the first couple of months before he got hurt last year, was one of the best stars in the National League. Clay Holmes, in his first year starting in a long time, had a really good year and is poised to be even better next year. David Peterson has shown through segments of his major league career that he can get on rolls and be that guy that gives you 7 innings every time out. And then you combine that with what we think are really, really talented young starters. And there is a bar we're going to have to clear to bring someone in to displace one of those guys.
You mentioned Clay Holmes, and it was incredibly impressive what he was able to do last year. Is there any scenario where you could see him filling a need in the bullpen to start the year, or is he going into the season just trying to build off of what he did last year?
Yeah, that's not a conversation we've had to this point. I think right now we're committed to him continuing to build off what he did as a starter. He put a really good base of innings under him this past year for the first year of transitioning, and we think he can build off of that and provide us even more innings. So right now we are looking at him as a starter. He's training as a starter, and I think he's excited to do that for the second year in a row.
When you are looking at the outfield now, obviously you've gotten rid of Brandon Nimmo, so really looking at center field and left field. Are you interested in guys that would be on long-term deals in those two positions, or with the glut of young players coming up, would you like shorter term so that you can give those kids an opportunity?
Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to completely close the door on anything. I think we have to evaluate all potential options that are out there. We talked about it at the time where we made the difficult decision to trade Brandon. One of the reasons we did it is because we have this incoming talent of young outfielders that we think can really contribute for us, not only this year, but for years to come. And so it would have to be a very unique situation for us to bring in someone who is going to block that group of young players for a long time.
I know you've been very open about your desire.
Dan, what are your thoughts on that comment?
I mean,
you buy it, number one. I mean, that's
yes, but not fully. I mean, because there's 3 outfield spots last time I checked. There's not just one. And you already have a guy in Juan Soto who really isn't a right fielder, so you should really be moving him to left. That's still 2 outfield vacancies. And Carson Bench and Jet Williams, last time I checked, are both center fielders. And if we have another outfield prospect I'm not aware of, Ray, I don't really know what he's talking about.
Yeah, you know what? And I know he's a believer in it. You got to have power in the corners in the outfield, some type of power, gap power, and
maybe
you could say they clearly view Carson Bench as a future center fielder. Jet Williams, although I like him a lot, he's probably a max 15 to 18 home run guy, where you're in that spot looking easily 25 to 30 home runs. Here's my thing. You are not trading Brandon Nimmo, who's a lock to hit you in the mid-20s, to replace him with Jet Williams, who's going to go down to, his first year. You have rookies. I understand you want to say the rookies are going to battle it out for center field with Tyron Taylor. Maybe you bring in another outfielder to battle it out. Okay. But you cannot sell me on a World Series contending roster not adding a significant piece. But what he said there was, unless there's a circumstance, like the way he said it, it kind of drew that confidence away from me a little bit. Like, unless it's a negotiation tactic,
The way he said it, Ray, you can kiss any outfield option goodbye. There's no Bellinger, there's no Tucker, there's no Buxton, there's no Robert, there's no Tatis, Bellinger, Quan. There's none of that. Duran, there's nothing. So you're right. If we have to take him at his word and it's a unique situation where you're going to part with a Jet Williams and a Carson Bench because you believe in them that much, again, he's probably just trading for a Jake Myers, stopgap, believing in Tyrone Taylor, waiting on Carson Bench, and that's going to be the outfield for the Mets in 2026. So,
oh my gosh, there's no way. I will go to spring training and raise hell.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Jake Myers is a nice piece. You want to tell me he's the transition guy, right? But here's the issue. You don't get Jake Myers and bring back Tyrone Taylor because they're both righties. Jake Myers obviously a way better player than Taylor. 343 at bats, 292, 24 RBIs. He's a higher contact guy, but his OPS is in 727. His OPS plus is 103. So he does the small things. 16 stolen bases and 343 at bats. That kind of goes to a little over 30. Like, what does his contract look like? I gotta look into this.
Yeah, no, it's something to think about. But that's the path Stearns is going to take. It doesn't seem like, again, you're not going to bring in a guy.
He's got 3 years as well.
The Luis Robert stuff, just kiss it goodbye, guys. Stephen Kwan, kiss it goodbye. It stinks. But you heard Stearns. Maybe Bellinger, because I don't know if Bellinger uproots the development of anybody. You could just play him wherever, but
that's a great point. I mean, you left, right, center. You need Bench needs a blow. He's not. Here's my biggest fear. Dan, I think you agree with me. Bench went to AAA and stumbled out the gate. How many Jared Kellenics have we seen through the years? How many Lastings Millage have we seen through the years? Can't miss, surefire. I was told Lastings Millage was Manny Ramirez. I was told Jared Kellenic was the Mr. Can't Miss. Hell, I was told Brett Beatty was the best hitter in his class, and the only reason why he fell to the Mets in the first round was because he was like 6 months older than everybody else. Just because it says that doesn't mean it's what they're going to be at the major league level. And my biggest fear is what we've talked about, for how long, Dan? The bottom of this lineup. If Carson Bench doesn't hit, you are screwed. You can't have guys, your bottom three, that can't hit. I don't know what Simeon's going to be, but is it fair to say we need to assume he's a 650 OPS guy? I don't think you could just sit here and magically turn the clock back. And that's what so many Mets fans think. Oh, he's going to come here and be great. No. Yeah, defensively, sure. But he's not Jose Iglesias. He was never he was back in the day, but you're talking 3-4 years ago. Jose Iglesias turned the clock back. How did that work for San Diego this year, Dan? The guy was on the couch by the end of the season. I think a lot of us get those blue and orange blinders, like, oh, we just got Jose Iglesias back at second base with Marcus. No, that's not how it works. He didn't hit last year. He didn't hit the year before. Now you have a rookie in center field competing with Tyrone Taylor. You going to sell me Jet Williams in left? You going to sell me that Mark Viento's going to play third and Beatty's going to play in left? Like, what? I understand it's negotiating, but it's I don't know. It's just the way he said it, that just concerned the hell out of me. And it's the first time I'm watching him with you guys.
I think about, too, the young days of a guy like when I was growing up, Lucas Duda. He broke in. He was a right fielder. We've had these conversations in the past, right? I don't know if the Mets take this path with a guy like Ryan Clifford, but maybe that is something. You move Soto to left. You believe in Clifford a little bit to play right, has a decent arm. We see how he looks out there, and maybe he gets his sea legs under him at the big league level in right field, slowly transitions to play first base if Pete Alonso's gone, right? They bring in a stopgap for a year, Ryan O'Hearn. They do something, right? We always have these random names we like to throw in. Well, you could always do that and then have these prospects, because that seems to be Stearns' MO. he wants to have these prospects ready to come up. Well, you got to see Clifford eventually.
Well, let me throw it into you now. We're talking about him, and we'll get back to the video in 1 sec. I want to bring something up really quick. The Mets clearly believe in Clifford. They wouldn't trade him at the deadline. Went from single A, double A, triple A last year. Clear power. We have another issue, Dan. He's a lefty. So he's a lefty. Bellinger would be a lefty. Schwarber's a lefty. Soto's a lefty. Ben's a lefty. Beatty's a lefty. So unless you plan on moving him, which the Mets clearly don't have that plan right now because they could have gotten a really damn good starter last year and we desperately needed one at the deadline. We didn't want to give him up for a Zach Gallen, who I'm not the highest on Zach Gallen, but he was better than what we were throwing out there. We're in the playoffs if we have Zach Gallen, people. We are. We are in the playoffs. And the Mets didn't want to give him up. He's a lefty. 22, be 23 this year. You know, there's no, like, getting around that. And it's something like, that's why, and I know, look, I know, Dan, you say it's not happening, but if the Padres are desperate and willing to take a package, I'm all over Tatis Jr. He would solve so many issues. Who's going to cost the moon and the stars, and I'm willing to give it up. That's just me. I know a lot of Met fans won't. I know a lot of Met fans say, well, you know, and obviously people around the league, San Diego's not looking to add money, but they're not necessarily looking to cap everybody off. But eventually they will be. And I don't know. It's like, what right-handed outfielders out there? Outside of Pete, what right-handed first baseman you going to get? What right-handed DH? Are we really going into next year when Mark Vientos as the DH again, we're running that back? There's no way Cohen issues an apology letter and we look next year and we got 3 guys in the bottom of this lineup with sub 100 OPS plus. Like way sub 100. Like Tyron Taylor's like 72. Give me your comments. We'll finish off the video.
Yeah, I mean, with the DH spot, I think that's what this trickles down to, because if you clog the DH spot, you bring in Schwarber, forget about seeing many of these prospects for a long time because you just don't have the spots. As much as we like to think there's spots there, there's not. Unless you, again, trade a Vientos, trade a Mauricio, find something with Beatty, like eventually that spot dries up. So I'm all for keeping the DH spot open. Not really. If you sign Schwarber, great. I'm not going to complain, but keep that open. If you bring back Pete, you give him some of those DH reps. If you bring back Marte, I know nobody wants to hear it, but he'd get some of those DH reps. Vientos would get a good amount of them. And those are 3 right-handed bats I just named right there. So I know there's not many on the market, which is frustrating. Could I get my hands on a Bo Bichette? Could I trade Brett Beatty and get Bo Bichette to Queens? I mean, that's really where
you trust him at third base?
Yeah, I mean,
he would have been the second baseman.
No,
see, that's the issue. You're paying, and look, I understand we wanted to move. There's got to be something bigger. You're not trading Brandon Nimmo for a guy who's at retirement age for a regular person making $26 million a year who can't hit. You want to talk run prevention? Fine. You have it up the middle. That's it. That's how I look at that. And I see a couple people put in the comments so far during the show saying, my prediction, or I think we're going to get Bellinger Schwarber. That's not happening. You're not going to have lefty Beatty, lefty Soto, lefty Benj, lefty Bellinger, lefty, you're not going to have 5 or 6 lefties in a lineup. It's just not happening. And you could break down the splits all you want. I know a lot of people say, well, check it out. Schwarber hit 20-something home runs off a lefty. That doesn't mean he's not striking out like crazy. Doesn't mean we just forget about the rest of the lineup. You know, I watched Soto go down a bunch against left-handed specialists this past year. Just is what it is. I'm just like, I'm trying to live in the land of reality here. Look, I'm a fan just like you guys. So is Dan. We try to live in a little bit of reality, though.
To bring Pete Alonso back, and I know that you don't talk about specific players and conversations, but when you have a scenario like this where you saw last year the Alonso conversation go months and months and months, there are also some guys that could fill that void right now on the free agent market. How do you balance wanting one player while monitoring and not losing potentially others that could fill that spot?
Yeah, I think it is a balance, and it's trying to stay in contact with everyone involved and understanding how different markets going to play out. And with Pete, it's also a recognition that he can fit on the team in multiple ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've talked about his calling card is his bat. And so, you know, we can get his.
He just said it, the quiet part out loud. Did you catch that? Let me replay it for you guys, the people who didn't catch that. The quiet part out loud.
Also a recognition that he can fit on the team in multiple ways.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. He just said, Pete, if you're coming back, you're a damn DH. That's what that means. Fitting on the team in multiple different ways. There's a reason why Scott Boras, one of the first press conferences he had, was what? Well, yeah, of course Pete's willing to be a DH. He's willing to do whatever it takes to win. You caught that right there, and you caught that right too, right?
I did.
I mean, we'll keep it going, but we could address that.
We've talked about his calling card is his bat, and so you know, we can get his bat into a lineup in multiple ways. And so I'm not sure it necessarily takes us out of pursuits that may be more timely than as Pete's market develops.
And that's the end of the interview right there. But that was super interesting right there. That's it. And that's why I think Pete's gone. I've been saying it for 3 months. Said it with Hoffman, who we're going to have on probably later on in the week as the winter meetings go on. We have a couple people that are at the winter meetings I've been talking to all day. It's impossible to book anybody right now, especially since the internet there is supposedly real crappy, what I was told. But that's why Pete's going to be gone, Dan, because you're going to have a team like the Red Sox. We're going to promise him full-time first base. And I think Pete wants to play the field. I actually think he'd probably give a discount to play in the field.
I think he likes playing in the field too. And the Mets are adamant, as they are with Diaz. They don't seem to be going up to that 5th year. And if Stearns was left to his own devices, Joel Sherman said it perfectly when we kicked off the offseason. Pete Alonso would not be a Met. And he's just not a Stearns player. The right-handedness, the lack of defense, the one dimension in his game, that is his power, that is his bat. We have to give that to Pete. But Stearns sees the full picture. He sees Clifford coming up. He sees guys like Ronnie Mauricio and Brett Beatty, who, let's be honest, Evan Roberts brought it up on the Rico. There's a real chance you could look at Brett Beatty as a first baseman moving forward. I know we've touched on that idea as well. It's a good thought because
He's a way better defender.
Do you know how much value Beatty would have to a big league team? He already has value. Like, he established that going into 2025 when he took on second base, which was a big leap in Brett Beatty's development from just playing third. If you add first base to that, and then God forbid Brett Beatty, maybe the spring training adds a left fielder, you know, to his repertoire, then Brett Beatty becomes a really good asset for this team. So that's kind of where my mind's at. Mauricio could be a first baseman too someday. Like, we talk about replacements to Pete. We could have those replacements to Pete. I'm not sure. I want to go out and trade for Spencer Torkelson and Vientos for Torkelson trade or something like that. It's not reality. I mean, I would love to see a world where Mauricio grabs a first baseman and maybe plays the position. These are all things that I'm thinking about. I'm sure Stearns is trying to think like Stearns, because if you're okay with letting Pete walk, to us, the fans, we don't see it that way. We see the 50 home run potential walking out the door. We see the 500 home runs, the fan appeal. We see all those things. He clearly sees something else, and maybe it's Murakami. Maybe it's Kazuma Akamoto. These are all names that are coming to mind when you think about not wanting Pete back, or necessarily, like you said, Boston comes to the table, gives 6 years to Pete. Mets aren't matching that. So what is their next pivot? And we'll have to wait and see, man. Right? It's going to be interesting. I don't know.
Absolutely. Guys, we're going to get some of your comments right now. Appreciate you guys' comment. Please like and subscribe if you're new here. And if you want to be guaranteed to get your comments read, be sure to become a member. In the description at the bottom, you click the link and become a member. It comes right up on our screen. We appreciate all the growing member community. I cannot believe where it is at. I am currently in construction on a private Discord which is going to be available to all of our members, and then the subscribers, which are members over on Facebook, which we have even a bigger subscriber base over there. Shout out to you people over on Facebook. And I want to be able to have an exclusive chat where we have some of potentially our guests. I've spoken to actually some of our media member friends who we've had on this show. If you guys are diehards of the show, you know who they are, about being involved in the Discord themselves, where you could talk to them, get information, share ideas, a place where Met fans feel safe, as we do have several chats over on X, but it'd be more a safe place to express your ideas. I understand it, guys. X, Facebook, they can be vile places. We put it out there. Believe me, we see it all. Tax left and right. That is not going to happen in this Discord. I want to encourage open dialogue. Talk about everything baseball. And another thing that I've been working on over here, for potentially our members, I'm debating whether that's going to be members only or not, but we're working on getting a roundtable together. I've spoken to several of the higher end Phillies and Braves podcasters, especially after the winter meetings are done, going into the following year, potentially right around spring training. I want to get them on here because, listen, we live in the New York bubble. I'll admit it. I'm a Jets fan. Everything revolves around the Jets, doesn't it? That's how I feel, at least. I'm sure with you with the Giants, everybody cares about the Giants, right? I want to know what's happening in Philly, what's happening in Atlanta. And no, I will not bring on, well, maybe I'll bring on a Washington guy, but I don't know. We'll see. We've spoken to a lot of different people. And also, I also spoke to Chris McMonagle, who may be the afternoon host going forward. I'm not sure on WFAN, but he's going to be coming on later on in the season as the Mets and Yankees play each other. So I'm trying to line up some things where we could talk about certain series with certain people who cover those teams. We have a lot of new things coming to Metcast. Very exciting. And I want to thank you guys who have been here since day one along for the ride. And with that said, we'll lead it off with Burns, one of our members. Burns, if I ever have the means to own a team, I want Ray as my GM and Dan as my Jay Horowitz PR guy. I would fire Dan right away because he'd be too nice to the players. On to the next. Clue says, if Pete walks, they need Schwarber. I agree, and Heyman agrees with you too. But look, it's easy to say we need Schwarber, Dan, but how many lefties are you gonna bring in here? Okay, Pete walks, you bring in Schwarber, right? That means you're automatically out on Tucker and Bellinger, doesn't it? You have 3 lefty outfielders, a lefty third base, and a lefty DH? You're going to have 5 lefties in the top 7 of your lineup?
It's a lot.
I always encourage people who tell me, Ray, you're wrong. Find me, and I may be wrong because I don't look for it. Find me the last World Series team that won with 3 lefties that were guaranteed starters, not because of injury, not because of circumstance brought up in the season. Find me the last World Series team that had 3 left-handed hitting outfielders all start day one and win a World Series. There's a reason why there's specialists out there, Dan.
Yeah, there's probably an example out there, but I hear what you're saying. It's not a good way to go about it. You want diverse sides of the plate when you think about it, left to right, all the way down, preferably. But yeah, I agree. You don't want stack lefties.
Absolutely. Let's keep it going. All right, Henry. CBS reported today the Mets met with Michael King. Yup, we touched on that. That's my guy. But look, you know what makes me think that Stearns is not going to grab him, Dan? Something he just said in that interview. The first few months, Senga was great before injury. Minaya had the injury in camp. All these Frankie Montas, he didn't talk about it there, but he went down with injury. You're going to really bring in another starting pitcher how many times has Michael King had 30 starts or 25 starts over the last few years? Do we know? I'm going to look it up right here. How many times has Michael King had 25 starts? Oh, that's why. Okay. How many times? All right, here. I got it right here. Michael King over his entire career, 15 this year, so he was injured. The year before, okay, 31 games he pitched in. The year before that, he made 9 starts, but he was coming out of the bullpen. So 40 appearances, 34-22. So he's been healthy probably twice. 2 out of the last 3 years, but only 2 out of the last 5.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to get some super clean medicals, I presume, right?
Yeah, and he was a reliever then too, right? So yeah, that's specialty you would need.
It's a
Very
David Stearns special right there.
I would love Michael King.
So here we go. Burns says, what do you fellas think about trading for Peralta and Megill? What would a package be like? That is interesting. I'll tell you, it's going to have to include. Everybody always wants to say, oh, give up Sproat because he's 26. They're going to want Tongue. They're going to get Tongue back. I would assume Tongue, Jet. I mean, what do they have? 5 top 100 guys? I would assume it's got to take 3 of them, right? You'd have to think. I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
They're the team that would say, we want Pena.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. I'd consider a Reimer and RJ Gordon. I'd consider Acuna in a trade like that. I think he could play well in Milwaukee.
Wouldn't you have to figure that they're going to try to sign him to an extension, Peralta, if you're doing that? And that's another thing. Is Stearns willing to do that? You don't only just have to give that. You lose the qualifying offer. So you lose them for absolutely nothing for 1 year. Are you willing to risk that? I don't think Stearns is.
Right.
That's why. Good.
I don't know if Milwaukee's paying him either, though. So I don't know. He probably.
I agree, but I'm saying somebody else of that mindset. Like I keep saying, the Red Sox are prime, man. If I'm the Red Sox, you get Peralta or Skubal, you could win it all next year because you have the horse at the top of the rotation. And I know a lot of my fans say, "Oh, well, Ray, what about McLean?" I got to see him do it for a full year. I'm not saying he can't, but I know what I'm getting out of Garrett Crochet. I know what I'm getting out of Tariq Skubal. I know what I'm getting out of Peralta.
Yep.
I'm fairly certain what I'm getting out of McLean. Also, I would like to see a lot of teams get second and third times around throughout the league, because that's what made Kodai Senga so successful when he first started here. Nobody knew him. Like, I could see Amai coming here and being an all-star this year. Absolutely. 97, 99. He's got the Volk change, the splitter, the slider, Dan. Nobody's seen him. You're looking at fuzzy tape from Japan.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
Would love Amai. Watch out for the Cubs and Amai. Heyman linked them today.
But don't they already have Imanaga? I thought he doesn't want to go where. I think at the end of the day, he's going to go where the most money is.
Right.
Andre says, Ray, the problem with King gets hurt and Imai struggles, then you go back to square one. I get it. Too risky. King is fine, but you need a higher end guaranteed front end starter complement to King. That's the issue. Are they out there? I don't see. Out of all players, you think Valdez is going to get a 7 or 8 year contract from David Stearns?
No.
Not totally sold. John on Facebook, thanks for checking in, John. He needs to make the big trade with Detroit, get Skubal. I know what you're talking about. My thing is, let me ask you, Dan. Detroit calls because it's going to take it. 1 for 1. You doing it? You know exactly what I'm talking about.
McLean for Skubal? Does it come with an extension?
Everyone always says that. Who's his agent? I'll let you answer your own question.
I think.
When's the last time a Scott Boras client extended with 1 year to go? That should be a Mets trivia question. We got to get back to that too. We got to start doing Mets trivia again.
Yeah. But no, I would not. I would personally not without the extension. With the extension,
because this is what we all fantasize about. Let's be real.
I have to sleep on it.
We make the playoffs.
I give up Benj any day of the week.
I don't think they would. I think they would be more apt to give up the pitching.
But Dan, you can't trade Benj. He's the future. Well, so
everyone's scarred from what you call it with the Cubs.
CPA. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and you know what? I think here's the fantasy, everyone. Let's go into the fantasy line. I got to get a thing made up. 2025 comes. 2026 comes. Good year. Mets make the playoffs. They lose in the second round. And now we're like, now it's time to go all in. McLean's the real deal. You go out and get a Skubal. Now you're top of the rotation. And I don't think Sproat or Tung are ever going to be the front line guys. I know some people think Tung will be. I'm not sold. I've been on that since day one. When you're throwing like that, it works. But for me, if you're throwing like that, you got to be throwing 96, 97 consistently, and he just doesn't. How many times throughout the season I'm looking at his fastballs, 93, touching 94. I got to see him 2 or 3 times through the league. But if one more guy outside of that, Dan, turns into the real deal, the Mets could absolutely be set. 100%. We'll get to a couple more here. Metafanic says Stearns has prioritized run prevention, whether it's a group of lefties or otherwise. Well, if he's going to do that, complete run prevention, he's not going to go out and spend all his money in Kyle Schwarber there.
No, that's for sure.
Right?
Yeah, he would not.
100%. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Our live stream. If anything breaks tomorrow, you know where to be. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, become a member, and be sure to leave a comment below. Always love engaging with you guys, and I can't wait for something big to drop. The anticipation is crushing. Take it easy, guys. Let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.
God bless.